This area here, holistically, is an economic melting pot. You know, you have the auditorium, you have Armstrong Park. Someone had mentioned something about developing a museum, African American museum. I mean, you have to look, to me, my opinion now, again, is you look at the whole area. Deal with an attorney, develop a board or commission. They do that with Audubon Park, City Park. The problem is that the people who control that don't even live in the city. But they come and they control our city. Look at the downtown development district. You know, that you have your city council, but the downtown development district control all the activities in the Canal Street downtown area. I don't mean to get off, but I just got to, got to look at this. If you control this area, you know, and look at not it separately, but holistically, that's the number one thing. Control the area, develop a board or commission, get your city council hookups down on board with that, get you an attorney, develop that, and just follow the pattern how the other folks do it and have done it historically. And it's a shame that they have been doing it and we don't control nothing.
Well, here we are today.
And here we are today, and you're absolutely correct. I see you getting me started.
I know.
Here we are today, and it's no excuse. We shouldn't be planning to give this to somebody else, this idea. This is our idea. This is your idea, Settler. This is your idea. You know, and we have to control that, number one, and say, this is us, this is what we want. Develop what we want, and you tell them, this is what we want. You know, you don't ask them, you don't crawl to nobody. You're in a power position here in which we control this area.
Yes,
and we're gonna show them that we want this area, we want the resources already committed to this area. And you do research, they probably have a lot more than that $38 million or whatever that comes to this area. They're probably, they more than likely they do. But the bottom line is control, and you tell them we want to control, this is our destiny, this is our history, and we don't want nothing, this is non-negotiable, we don't want nothing else. And then the economics is already there, and the economics in the flow, and you develop, we want this developed like this, and blase.
Randolph, that's kind of like what we have been saying, we in the community saying for years. I'm just saying, I don't want to interject what we've been saying, but it's basically what you're saying, control.
Okay, well,
and each time a table is built, we are not asked to come to the table. So that's why we're in the streets, we are marching, we're getting...
You own the table. We control the table. We just haven't realized that yet. We control the table.
No, we realize
that
we realize with City Hall saying they should be relocated to the Municipal Auditorium. But I don't want to... Okay. So Randolph is a former City Hall employee. And he know a lot. He know where everything is, and we really would like to have him become a part of SOS. I told you that on Saturday. So that's why he's passionate. He know what Treme has been going through over the last 50 years, and so do I. So does my husband and a lot of other people in here. Okay, so the next question.
Well,
anyone else? Go ahead, Alana.
Just to add to what he's saying, he has an excellent point of having control, having special tax districts, having money.
Correct.
As I understand, that is going to be asked of this group, put on the table. And one way to put money on the table is to create a commission.
There you go.
Have a special tax district where there's money every year that's collected for the sole purpose of the park maintenance, use of the auditorium, and things of that nature. He's 100% on point with that.
Oh, we know, and that'll be revealed at another time, but we know all too well, Alonzo.
Cheryl?
And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Go
off,
ahead.
but I just want to bring, if you look at Lincoln Center in New York City, it's very similar to what we have here. When they built that, they had multiple complexes and they had a lot of land. And the multiple complexes worked in synergy with one another to draw tourists, to draw revenue, to do fundraising. And so I agree, it's a great opportunity. I'm just curious, is the land itself in some sort of a historic trust, or is there any way to put pressure on the establishment to set aside this property for community so that number one, you maintain it as it is, so that no one else can get control over it. You also have a physical geographic area that you're now identifying as an area for specific activities. And it will allow you to then draw the tourists, because tourists are coming to, one of the issues that I'm dealing with the organization that I'm working with is the fact that your traditional street musicians who used to have free run of Jackson Square are now in competition with a lot of people who are not even playing traditional New Orleans jazz. And yet people come to the city because they want to hear that. And so there's a lot of competition down there, and many of these musicians are elderly, so they're not in a position to even deal with a lot of these young kids who are coming in playing whatever and doing whatever that's not even part of the tradition. And there's a desire to protect that tradition and protect these individuals by putting them in a central location which can be identified for tourists, for dollars, for any kind of funding. But the first step though is to get the land and get it secured.
Correct.
And I'm just curious as to what is there any sort of historic designation on that property?
I'm asking the questions. I want your input. There's a lot that I can't say because I have been working in Treme for years and years, and I can honestly admit some things we did neglect when we had an opportunity, or we should have banged on the door harder. We took the road, as the congressman now says, of least resistance, because we wanted to be nice. And that's just the bottom line. We thought that sitting at a table, talking to our elected officials and saying, oh, well, this is what we would like to see in Treme. We can create our own economic, see, I'm going off. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am, no concern. How is the information be passed on? Will it be passed on to Cantrell administration, the input that comes from here?
Well,
I'm
hopefully,
sorry, just walk in, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. Hopefully she's watching so she can get it live. But
So
yes,
I'm
the
sorry,
information.
there won't be no transition.
But I'm trying,
I'm
trying
to City Hall.
but I'm trying to answer you. Are you
I
the
think you have,
gentleman?
I think you have.
Are you the gentleman that called me on yesterday?
Yeah, that's the one the dog like Smith.
Okay, see ya. Anyone else?
Can we answer? Do you want to answer his question?
Well, the information will be passed on
To
as
the
it's
city
going
council,
live now,
just-
but after we collect the information
It's
from
gonna be
Zoom, the survey,
A formal
and
presentation to the city council?
yes, the live streaming, we're gonna analyze it and we're going to present it to you all once again and to the mayor, our city
And city
council
council,
person,
right.
and anyone else that wanna have access to it. That's why we're here. We didn't know what all we wanted to do other than let people know that this is not over with. Treme does not need to be threatened again, ever again, with developers or any governmental entity saying they want to relocate, not just over at Armstrong Park, but on Basin Street. We don't want to see this anymore. Our community is not what it used to be. And I don't want to go off on that. I want to show a fair process in where we have invited people to give their input so that we can demonstrate to the mayor, to our elected officials, both local, state, and federal elected officials, that we are serious. We don't want this to happen again. So that's why we asked you to come out here on this hot summer night, to give us the information. Tell us what it is. Tell them what it is. We have an idea. We've been having ideas for years, sitting on the stoops, telling our story. I grew up in this culture, but I don't want to put that out there. They didn't listen to me when I sent it in writing. Otherwise, our community will not be, threatened with short-term rentals right now. But that's a whole nother story. And I'm not here to talk about what I want, what Asata want. Joan, not what you want. But we want input. We want to see how far apart what our community vision is from city residents or city businesses. I say it's not that far apart. Marcel?
still on programmatic features, right?
I'm on programmatic features.
All right. Well, I'll just use that time to I just want to throw something out there. It's the Municipal Auditorium is basically built.
This is the park we're talking about.
Oh, we talk about the park.
Yeah, let me get through
So
these
you
questions.
basically
'cause-
got them all separated.
Yeah, we have them
Okay, so it's
separated.
just the
I'm
park.
sorry if I
Okay,
didn't
okay.
fully explain
All right,
that.
no.
This is my first
Okay, I'm
time
finished
doing
with
it,
that.
and I'm trying to be as fair and relaxed and chill and cool and all of that, but I'm not really feeling it right now, but
The lady
y'all
right
gonna
there.
help me get through this, so.
Okay. So I'll wait till then.
I really like what this man was saying about street musicians in the park. I think that would be a really great programmatic feature to see in the park.
Okay. Anyone else before I go to question number 4? Okay, my favorite subject. What income generating opportunities would you propose? Angela?
She got to speak louder.
So during those Thursday in the parks, that
Thursdays in the park.
there was, I think there was an organization that was funding. I think it was half the city and half maybe the Jazz and Heritage Foundation or somebody. I'm not sure exactly who was funding but there were donations asked at the entrance and also lots of concessions and vendors were present during those events. So that was, at least
You wanna speak on that, Alonzo?
just saying we had that and it was working.
Festivals or concessions?
With concessions. Okay, got it.
Now donations I need to speak about, because years and years and years ago, the agreement was made that the park would always be free and accessible.
Even if
That
they
you cannot charge to enter Armstrong
they were
Park.
voluntary. They were
So,
voluntary.
right, it was all donations, but you're still paying to go in there. We wouldn't wanna see that. Well, that was-
The lady here.
huh?
The Jazz Heritage Foundation, by charter, they are required to give things back to the community. They are a nonprofit. As a result of that, this is what we dealt with them 20, 30 years ago when we put forth a project called Corn Dew in the Jazz and Heritage Festival, because they were negligent in terms of putting back in the community. So therefore, yeah, that's why they had that jazz in the park. That came directly from my understanding from that foundation or the Jazz Fest itself. So they have a mandate, so that can continue, and it's required that it should continue, and it can continue through them to make that a reality in the park. So that is something that exists today from my understanding.
I mean, it was successful. I attended every
Correct,
single
correct,
one.
correct.
So anyone else, wait, let me get the lady in the back.
I've always wondered if there's a plan for what I think would be old jazz museum and those other abandoned buildings there to like actually be able to
Okay, I can't really understand.
Yeah, I think it's the old jazz museum.
The old jazz museum,
That could be a restaurant.
where is that? Where is the old jazz museum? Where is
In
it?
in the park, there's
She's
the
talking
other
about
old.
The old
abandoned building.
WWOZ building.
Oh, she's talking
Oh,
about.
she talking
Is that what it-
Perseverance.
Perseverance
I
Hall.
can speak on that, but let's keep
So
going.
was there talk about maybe OZ coming back to the park? Is that what
Well,
I
we're not gonna talk about what they're talking about. I wanna talk about what you want to see there. Your ideas, your visions, your thoughts. So what are you saying? You think that would be a great
We're talking about
idea for the,
concessions, like restaurant or concessions in that building, is something that I would.
okay, more utilization of the buildings that exist now in Armstrong Park? Other than the Mahalia Jackson, or are you
Yeah.
including that?
Because they're cool buildings, and it's just a shame that they're sitting there, so kind of skirt around and not even be able to be used or anything.
I agree. Anyone else?
I would love to see some sort of masking workshops or beading workshops. There's an organization that does a trad jazz workshop. I saw them on Facebook. They had 75 to 100. They do this every year. And they had 75 to 100 out-of-town guests who came in to take classes to learn how to play traditional New Orleans jazz. They had an arrangement with the hotels, they had an arrangement with the restaurants. It's a very well organized organization, and no people of color, which shows you how popular this culture is to the rest of the world. And I think that that would be a great way to not only work with your social labor pleasure club, because everybody wants to know how to make a mask. Everybody wants to know how to make an Indian outfit. Everybody wants to know how to dance in the second line. So let's teach them and charge them. And you got the facilities in the old OZ buildings. You got the buildings already there.
Anyone else? Yes, Delana?
Later on.
Lena?
When I travel, I like to go to different cultures to get, items from that culture. And so when my friends come in town, they typically wait until Jazz Fest to come and see Congo Square and get the items at Jazz Fest. So then when they want to come in town now, there's a lot of items that I don't know where to send them. And it would be awesome if everything at that Congo Square and Jazz Fest, if we had those setups here with the cultural, all of the clothing and the instruments and masks, and I love the Indian idea of what we come here in one spot and get everything from the culture from Congo Square you can buy.
So that's kind of like a cultural complex, incubators type.
Like Williamstown.
Okay, let me, this is our first question.
I don't have a question, but I hear a lot of commercialization. We're talking about restaurants, we're talking about gift shops. And I thought the purpose of this was to protect what we already have. This is a sacred space. And so I think that it's the responsibility, because it is a sacred space. This is a cultural, racial issue, and it needs to be protected. And so in my reimagining how this could be protected and funded, I think that our congressmen, or our several congress folks that we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity with this presidential administration to tap into some of the resources that they're offering for infrastructure. Because they talk a lot about the preservation of parks and reconnecting communities. And so I think it's just about the way that you frame this. This could be a reconnection to all communities, especially within the Black community in Treme. And when I say that, I think about the banning of all live music in Treme, which pushed a lot of musicians out. I think about the amount of short-term rentals that they have just within this small area. And I think the goal should not be to commercialize, but to protect. And I think it's time to call on them, to call on the presidential administration, not the local administration, but the national federal administration, to help come in and lend a hand with this issue. And I think it's gonna take, once we see what this new election cycle does, it's gonna take really leaning on those elected officials that we see come in. And so, I don't wanna see shops. I don't wanna see, restaurants. That's not the space for that.
But for our purposes tonight, we're taking it all in.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm just giving
Okay,
you
one more.
Okay, so, during COVID, we lost two very important elders, Mr. Ronald Lewis of the Big Night Social Ed and Pleasure Club, and Mr. Sylvester from the Backstreet
Yes.
Museum. So we now have two very, very important repositories of the Treme culture and the masking Indian culture and the second line culture, which are the House of Dance and Feathers in my neighborhood in the Lower Nine, and the Backstreet Museum. And nobody's doing anything with either of those places, at least not with the House of Dance and Feather. I'm not as aware of what, if anything, is being done with the Backstreet Museum.
So your suggestion is, or ideas that
Would be to
their
bring
collection
the
be
incredible
relocated
collections of
somewhere
both of
outside?
those museums into the buildings.
Okay, thank you. And I'm
It's hard to separate.
okay, I'm trying to get it all in, but you all know that you can go to the
survey.
New Orleans Culture Preservation Committee Facebook page.
And the save
Or the
also.
survey, you can leave your comments there. And of course, on Zoom tomorrow, if you all don't need to come back tomorrow, if there's something that I'm missing on any particular item. Okay, so how do you currently use Congo Square in Armstrong Park? Anyone? Do you? Kinda, sorta?
I go to the drum circles.
You go to the concerts over there? Marcel?
I lead, 4 days a week. I lead experiences that start there and walking back to my house. So
When you
talk
say
ab-
experiences, what do you mean?
Experience is basically it's like what a tour would be,
Okay.
but it's a little deeper than a tour, because I'm not a tour guide. I'm an artist and, a generational descendant of the city. So I just talk about the history of my family for the last 300 years, significant of Congo Square, Black masking traditions, and my own artwork and post-Katrina legacy of my art. But I started Congo Square. So I'm in Congo Square at least 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. And so that's why I said the thing about the bathrooms, because everybody asks me, is there anywhere to pee? But, and now I see, a whole bunch of the commercial tours are now starting to start there. They used to start from Jackson Square. Now the center of gravity is, because of gentrification, is moving to Congo Square, where we always been doing our thing on the outside of the purview of the permits. Because you have to have permits to do all the stuff in the tourist track,
I'm a
right?
licensed tour guide, so yes.
Yeah,
I
so
understand.
I used to have a license too to do all that, but the thing about Congo Square that's beautiful is it used to be outside of the purview of permits. And it's good to keep it decommercialized. It has to be a safe space outside of market forces. Because gentrification is always kind of led by quote unquote these mysterious market forces that look like white people in real life. Right? So
I'm holding.
So
I'm holding.
So yeah, so part of the use of the Congo Square kind of ties into keeping it decommercialized, keeping it about our story, and I'll stop there.
Okay.
I'll wait till you
Let
get to
me
the
get
building.
Alonzo, then the lady. I know your name, but I can't think of it. And then Prince. No, Alonzo. Go ahead, Alonzo.
Yeah.
And anyone else, can you just raise your hand? Like I said, I'm trying to be cool up here, but it's hot up in here. I'm trying to be cool and I'm trying to be relaxed. Now I have some water, just the most stuff. Go ahead, Alonzo.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with the last two comments about the over-commercialization. But I more agree with the man over here about establishing a commission that will have control of the amount of commercializing that goes on in that space. My concern is I can't think of any place in the world where there's a sacred space. Even when you go to Vatican, that's a sacred space, but they control how many visitors, how much they charge to walk on those Vatican grounds. You can go to the Colosseum in Rome. Sacred space, same thing. And my concern is when we get to the point of saying we don't want to commercialize, the issue is we haven't been commercializing.
Exactly.
We don't have any funding to do anything with. We rely on government. It changes from administration to administration. Budgets get cut, and you're in a situation that you're in right now. But if you have a commission where you have a millage every year that goes into that, you have a sustainable level of funding already. And if you have that commission, you have the level of control on how much commercializing will take place. And until you have that control, everything that we're saying, we're gonna be in this spot 5, 4, 10, 15 years again, wondering where we're gonna get funding to sustain whatever we're talking about today.
Let me let her answer, say, and then Prince, and then I'll come back to you, just so you thought. Yes,
No,
you forgot,
agree
right?
completely. What I was gonna say was difference is like, the Congo Square space with the trees is a place of worship. I actually go to Congo Square because I have a relationship with that tree that is personal. I'm sure Ty has plenty to say more about this, and it's a sacred space for 3 living religions. And just that it should have protection just because of that. I mean, I don't see the mayor trying to move City Hall in San Augustine Church. That would be
So,
enough for.
is that how you use Congo Square? You go there so that you can sit and be under the tree?
The tree is a sacred place to me, yes.
It's a sacred place. where the
And
tree
to
is
many
located.
others that I know.
Prince?
I agree. For me, it's a sanctuary. It's my church. Whether Luther and Jamila are out there or not, whether Preservation Society is out there or not, many of us, I'm sure many others in here use that as a part of our spiritual environment. So I'm already uncomfortable with not just an idea of commercialization, but also the tourists have to have some degree of control. I don't want to see it turn into a dog park. I've gotten into literal, aggressive encounters with tourists who feel it's okay on Sunday morning to bring their dogs to that tree and use it like a toilet. When we gonna be out there in an hour or 2 hours, barefoot, before our ancestors. So I'm already a bit touchy about over commercialization, even over active tourism. It is our culture. I have a problem when I see a group of white people making voodoo dolls in Congo Square at the tree in complete, denial of our sacred space. For me, that's a problem. So I like to keep it the way it is. I like it quiet. I do think we, as Marcel said, have an economy, but it's not necessarily above table, and it's not necessarily being recognized. I know I bring a lot of tourists to that space. I'm sure he does. We bring a lot of tourists to this city. And so I think in terms of even that value of the space is overlooked by other areas, the French Quarter, the Garden District. It's overlooked, and it's undervalued in terms of the number of tourists that want to come there outside of traditional tourism, who want a more grassroots, down-to-earth exploration of our culture and our community.
So, Randolph, let me just say this. So, I understand everything you're saying, but I think what I want to point out is there a missing educational component around Congo Square and really the entire Armstrong Park complex, because many of us who grew up and lived through the destruction, we don't talk about the destruction or that history. So more education needs to be a part of or included into the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't want to sound repetitive, but maybe I will say some things that might be repetitive. But the brother right here, this brother here, him, and everybody here, the ideas that everyone has put forth is what I see as self-sufficiency, but I look at the whole area. The board, the commission, my brother, I think that is right now the best way to go and identify, as somebody said here, your territory, what you want to control. And I think that when you deal with the Mahalia Jackson building, when you deal with the sacred space, when you deal with, what's that, Mars Jeff, I believe, all of that is in the area. And when you look at that area, that is, when you realistically look at it, that could be the most economically self-sufficient area. And everybody knows what self-sufficient means. You don't need monies from the government. It generates its own funds with entertainment, with tours. I mean, everything with limited commercial that's respectful. Everything everybody said here can be encompassed in that whole area. Don't look at just one area. I beg you, don't do that. You should look at the whole area of Satchel, okay? All of the buildings, because we're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake if you're just looking at the sacred area. But that's the fight, though. I mean, you can't take away the sacred area, bro. No way in the world. But the whole area is sacred, and utilize the whole area and demand. This is our area, historically, culturally, racially. This is our area. This has been our area. It has a history to that. And you demand the whole area. get your board, get your planners, get a
Randolph,
lawyer,
Randolph,
and hook that stuff up.
That's what
it.
we're gonna
Okay,
do.
I'm just
Let me, cause we
emphasizing.
still on one topic,
Well, we
one
just took it all. We
area.
just took it all.
Okay,
That's why
so
you-
you just took it all in, right?
The
So would you
separation.
like to see the fountains operational again?
Yeah,
Do you all know that there are fountains over
Yeah.
there around in Congo Square?
yeah.
So I guess we can do a show of hands, or if anyone wanna speak to that.
I like that idea.
You like it, so that's one.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone in here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Let's move on, because it's,
20, 20, 21. My mom used to go underneath the fountain, so yes, the fountain. Okay, Miss Manning, I'm finally off slide number 1, the questions. Let's go to the next one. All right, y'all, I'm burning up here. I need one of those second line fans right about now. Do y'all have one? Anything? Let me see, excuse me.
You better get to the municipal auditorium.
Look, I'm not
Next
used to
one.
speaking in public,
next
and
slide,
most of you all in here,
next
y'all
slide.
know me. Okay, so, no, this still, oh, she's working on it, she's gonna get it. She entered that, admit her, okay. How did we get this happening?
While that's happening, I would like to answer this gentleman's question about is the park protected? The Congo Square section is on the National Historical Registry. However, the mistake that happened was that they only registered that little parcel right there. But in actuality, the whole park sits on Congo Square, right?
Yes.
So there are plans to make it a UNESCO site as well, to kind of add another layer of protection to the space. But they seem to, pardon me?
You want the timeline?
No, because somebody else is working on it for us. So
Timeline for what?
the UNESCO, making a UNESCO site of memory. In Louisiana, believe it or not, there's only one spot on the UNESCO site of memory, and that's the point. Yeah, that's it. In all of Louisiana, there's only one spot. Poverty Point. Yep.
Wow. Can I just be honest? We didn't do a run through. This is our run through for tomorrow. I'm sorry, you all.
Can we just go to the second one? So wait, what's the second section?
Yeah, the second one would be
We're on the
We did
municipal
Armstrong.
auditorium. We can
Okay,
go to
yeah,
the
let's
Which
put
the
them in
people are
municipal
talking about.
auditorium.
That's why the separation. They really attaching it all together.
Right,
You know,
but
so-
everyone is, but specifically, we would like to know what you all would like to see at the municipal auditorium. You knew what it once was, arts, music, dance.
Entertainment
for
center.
entertainment center.
Leave it just
Sports
like that.
also, in poetry.
Yeah.
We don't wanna leave that out, so.
Concerts. Right.
Concerts,
Right. All
definitely
that, because
James
it remained
Brown.
just like that. Oh, yeah. That's where your economic
Yes.
development is, right?
And I graduated
That's
from
right,
that.
that's right. High school.
So let's just get some input on that.
That's economic development right there,
Go
101.
Prince. And
Well, I
then
want to first publicly agree with Marcel that if it ends up getting torn down, I'd be happy with it being returned to green space.
Okay. So that's a vision, that's a thought, that's an idea. Okay, who's next? Let me get her and then I'll go to you, Marcel.
The green space is definitely on the table. If it's rebuilt, I think it should be a cultural center of the Afro-Caribbean diaspora in New Orleans. And it would be, it could have a museum and a library to contain the collections of those two museums that I mentioned, and an educational component so that it could be a live, space where it's not just a museum with things behind glass, but where people would actually, young people would be actually trained in the arts that are being exposed, and some form of performance as well. But mostly about Afro-Caribbean culture in response to the situation in New Orleans.
Who's next? Marcel.
Unless somebody else wanna go first, because we all up here dominating the conversation.
Okay, the lady in the back.
Some other voices. I wanna say something though.
Okay, I'm not gonna leave you out. We're on a municipal auditorium now, so this is
But I'll
the
let somebody else go
building.
first, then I'll go.
Okay, so kind of you.
Yes, I think that it should be a civil rights museum.
A civil rights
Yes,
museum.
I understand that the culture, recreation, and tourism that there's been, a project slated on the books at least for the Civil Rights Museum for, I think, maybe the last couple decades.
Whoa.
And so, the Civil Rights Museum is supposed to go to New Orleans at some point. So there could be a possibility, I'm thinking that that could be in concert with the state, Lieutenant Governor's office, the Cultural Recreation and Tourism. I also believe that this civil rights history has to be inclusive. It cannot be just the history of New Orleans, because Louisiana as a whole, which would be the Louisiana Civil Rights Museum, civil rights started here with the Baton Rouge Plus boycott in 1953, which was the precursor to the 1955 November Plus boycott. But for some reason, the way that our history is told on a national scale, it's always said that it started in November, which is not true, because it started here.
Started here.
So I am the daughter of John D. Garner, who was involved in the Baton Rouge sit-ins in 1960s, and there's a case called Garner versus Louisiana. So this is something that I've advocated on over the course of years. I've been speaking with the state already regarding civil rights trail that was just launched just recently. So I certainly believe this would be an appropriate space, considering the history of Congo Square itself. And on a personal note, just out of transparency, since I'm originally born in Baton Rouge, and that's where my family is, that's where the civil rights movement started in the state. And if I had my way, I would say Baton Rouge. I mean, I live in
We're not talking about Baton Rouge now.
I'm being transparent, because I understand that the tourist dollars are gonna dominate.
I know,
When
but-
it comes to New Orleans, even if that's not the best historically correct place. So considering that, if it has to come to New Orleans, then I am advocating that it goes to Municipal Auditorium.
Let me
But
just-
I also advocate that Baton Rouge is where this thing started with the.
We're not talking about Baton Rouge, but I get you, know, we spoke on yesterday. But what you would like to see at the Municipal Auditorium is a civil rights museum, along with the Bank Street Cultural Museum. And what's the feather?
The House of Dance and
The
Feathers.
House of Dance and Feathers. And I'm just gonna throw in the Treme the Peak
My hand is up.
Museum.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have to go with Jackie,
Okay.
because she's my boss, right? Okay, Jackie.
All
hey, how
right,
you
so
doing?
I want to say that, I think it's most important that we have things in the auditorium that, generates income.
Correct.
And there are a lot of things that the city does not have. But, for instance, we talked about, restoring the auditorium to its past use. That wouldn't be the best thing to do.
Correct.
Because number one, there are other venues almost that support that same number of individuals. And so we have to look at what we don't have. And what we don't have are small venues that community organizations can go and have their concerts and their shows. So I would suggest that we look at, instead of going back to the 4,500 seated venue, we look at smaller, we look at smaller venues. And as I mentioned, we look at things like a supper club, maybe some commercial stores and in there, because in addition to getting tax dollars, we also have to generate income. For instance, the Audubon Institute, well, they get a large allocation from the state and probably from the city, but they also generating income, so we have to do that as well.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so Marcel, and then you, and you're on the Municipal Auditorium, so I'm gonna let you into your comments too, and then Natalie.
So cool.
Okay.
So that was good. So that was my original position. Municipal Auditorium. Just whatever the use is, right? I just want to just reiterate that it should be about the preservation, the advancement, and the presentation of New Orleans Black culture. And I just want to reiterate that a bunch of times because like in the past, it hasn't been reiterated. People just say, oh, the culture of New Orleans, that's very vague in the wake of gentrification. Like people could use the culture could be anything. Like especially when, and then the neighborhood of Treme, the citizens of Treme can be anything after it's gentrified. We ain't talking about black people that been there forever no more. We talk about 60% white on my street. You know what I mean? So I just want to say that whatever's in the auditorium, it should be about black culture. I wouldn't want it to kind of go back to being like Rex balls and the King of the Elf balls. And, you know, that's what it really was originally built for, the white people to do their segregated Mardi Gras balls, and for Al Jolson to do his blackface performances in 1930 with 4,500 segregationists watching him. And, you know, so it was really, the building was built to be a tool for white supremacy.
Correct.
We tore down a black neighborhood and built a white supremacist building.
Right.
And we fighting for it, I guess, because now everybody got 5 or 6 more generations of history after the original racist intent of the building. But we just got to keep in mind that for the future of it, we should put some kind of protections in place. And that protection has to be strong language about what we want, whatever it to fall under. And I just always want to just keep reiterating protection, presentation, advancing of black culture, whatever it is.
Randolph.
Yes, is that correct? Jackie, excellent. It's brought it here with everybody again. And we are talking about the Municipal Auditorium
Yes.
in terms of it being, you know, basically a money generating place without taking away its historical relevancy and significance. And when the matter of the Black Museum, African American Museum is being thrown out, there's land space here, I believe. I don't know how large you want it, but you can, or we can consider building a museum. It'll still be attractive. We have a lot. That's a lot of space.
Right.
You don't have to harm anything. Sacred space, nobody touching that at all. But you have space there that could be converted, and a building, a museum can be built. You know, it don't have to be a monstrosity museum, but it's something that will bring more value to this whole area. I'm still looking at the whole area, bro, you know, and it'll bring tourists, international. We have, believe it or not, we have international connections in here too. We talking about Africa, is what I'm saying, okay? And I'm not just looking at, you know, I'm looking at a world. I'm connecting with the world here. We have to look at it from a world perspective, not just you know, but it's key and important, but it's basically connected. We talking about Haiti, we talking about Ghana, Kenya, we talking about all of those places. We talking about the world.
You know, I don't mean to cut you off,
I
but
know
I
you gotta
haven't
do
seen
that, but
Joan
yeah, go
in
ahead.
years, so
I'm just
Joan wanna talk.
throw that in your head.
I get it, and I'm just really trying to be respectful to everyone,
problem.
give everyone a chance, because as I said earlier, we want your ideas, your thoughts, your vision, so that it can be presented.
Correct.
So Joan, how you doing, Joan?
I'm excellent. How about you?
I'm up here, Joan, after all
I
these
know,
years.
I
What
know.
happened?
Well, as you know, I really love Treme, and I think every idea that everyone has discussed can be implemented in my idea here. First of all, the auditorium is architecturally a fabulous building. I'm sorry to say that the interior design really has very little to offer, except an idea that I'm going to present.
Okay.
And the idea is this. First of all, most people are visual. And so we're talking about tourists come to New Orleans because we have different and we have exciting to offer. Different is really important. They learn history, they learn culture. They line up at the aquarium, the IMAX, and all of the museums. The Municipal Auditorium can offer easy access, education, and a unique presentation. The existing building can offer a major tourist attraction with location, the dome ceiling in the inside, the seating arrangement, and the opportunity for major profit. What if you could see the history and sequence of the world from the inside? When you have a globe, the globe, as every child is educated on the exterior of a globe. And of course, what I want you to think about is, what if 98% of the people do not understand the sequence of history, paleontology, Egypt, America, and all the simultaneous things that are happening? So let's think about, first of all, we have the technology to design an incredible screen. The Japanese have something. There is an entity called Maparium, which is in Boston, and it's an incredible, complete dome. But what again is it? It's the outside of the globe. And being that I was an educator for years, I know that really importantly, it will be to have kids understand history, geography, everything on an easier presentation that is more visual. So supposing you're sitting in this domed, expansive screen, and you're on the inside of the globe, how many people really understand what was happening in this part of the world and what was simultaneously happening in that part of the world? And you can do that in today's technology. More than that, I guess what I'd like to ask, when Louisiana was discovered, what was happening at the same time in China, in Europe, and, what was going on with the gold rush in California? But let's talk about the African American history. Again,
What was
every
going on in
screen.
Africa? That's what
I'm sorry.
I just want.
The screen,
we was
the
thinking
screen can absolutely give the history, with the technology we have today of computers and whatever, from the history that the lady was explaining, as well as any other aspect of history, but chronologically. And an easy presentation for folks to understand, and it would be so visual if you had a screen like that.
Well, we can, John, we can put that,
Well,
and
I mean,
it's being.
I'd like to still offer, if you can see, this is the Maparium in Boston. But again, it's the outside of the globe. And I think kids are not taught properly, the education of, chronology.
Well, I'm gonna say, I think that's a great concept. I think it's something that, it's being recorded, so your idea of what can happen over there will be part of the record in analyzing, what the people say.
Exactly.
You wanna give it to me, or
I'm
you
gonna
wanna
leave
hold
this
on
with
to
you,
it?
absolutely.
Okay, and so,
The lady in the black.
the lady in the black in the back, okay.
That may be a little bit more detail than what we're looking for, but I wanna back up some of what you were saying. The African American Museum in DC, the way it's laid out, when I finally got a chance to go, chronologically and geologically, it's phenomenal in its learning features. And so I think that might be a little bit of what she's touching on, but that, I think that's a fantastic.
Is that your vision also?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Not necessarily the screen, but that, everything, the chronological.
Great.
This is great, Cheryl, I wanna thank you, I've gotta run, but I just wanna ask one request, and I'm more than willing to help you with this. We're renovating the facility on the corner of Playground and Esplanade, there's North Grand Park Center, there's the African American Museum, there's the Petite Museum. Can we get all of these cultural organizations together, so we can make sure we're not duplicating one another? Because one of the first things that they're gonna say to stop us is, we already have it.
Right.
And so there needs to be synergy amongst the organizations that are already here, so that we can say, yeah, we have, it may seem like it's duplication, but like someone was saying, you need small spaces, you need mid-sized spaces, you need larger spaces, because there are multiple needs within the community. And so, I hate to run, but I will offer, if you want, I will offer to bring everybody together who are heading these cultural organizations, social labor pleasure clubs, so that we can all, as leadership, talk about what we're gonna have in our facilities and how they can work together.
Yes.
I signed in, so you got mine.
Yes,
You got
yes.
mine.
And I
I'm saying
know-
that as Episcopal.
She just wanna make sure she knows who you are. Alonzo?
Again, not to be redundant about anything, but, and anybody could correct me, my understanding from what I read in on the internet and people I talk to.
Excellent.
The challenge is to now push on the community what to do with this whole space. Because the idea that
Can I
City Hall
just,
has.
I hate to interrupt, but can I just say citywide?
Citywide.
Because our community is kind of,
Citywide.
okay, so
Sure.
we need citywide
Sure, absolutely.
participation in that.
Thank you. So having said that, it seems to me the challenge is how you're gonna pay for it. More than the visions, the ideas, because we could talk about that forever. So, as it was noted, the Civil Rights Museum has funding already from the state. And my understanding is that's anywhere from 12, 14, $20 million. I don't know the exact number, but it's in the tens of millions. And that Civil Rights Museum has a board or a commission that's looking for a space. We know we have 38 million just to do the building. We know that if we organize and create a commission, and a commission can generate millage, we then therefore can write for grants at the federal level and receive funding. So if you're looking at this from a funding level, because I believe some people in this city government is challenging some of us here
No, we've been
to
challenged.
come up with how you're
and we
going to
accepted
do this
it.
funding.
Okay.
And now that we're accepting that, these are the things, at least in my mind, that we should be trying to piece together in terms of numbers and dollars and say, this is the funding line. And with the funding line, now we have all the ideas on the table and how we can put some of those ideas in place. But in my mind, the bigger challenge is how you're gonna pay for some of this, where you're gonna get some of the funding from. And if you identify that ahead of all these great ideas that we're talking about, the ideas then therefore can be implemented. Once we identify, not say this is gonna be exact, but we identify those pots of money that are under our control as a body, as a commission, and then we now therefore take those line items and put forth all the different ideas within that space.
So can I,
You're right, not just where the money is, because if we start with where the money is, we're going to be subjecting again to the people who have the money and surrendering the vision. We
But-
have to
but
get the
that's-
vision and then get the money, not start who has the money and give up the vision.
but that's why we're here, and we have two challenges. The first one we're doing tonight, to come up with a vision.
Right.
I think we all are old enough in here to understand a vision without resources or funding is just a vision. We're not there. We have a vision, and we have had some information on where we can receive funding, and we've been offered grant writers to help us. This challenge is real. We do not want the threat of City Hall, a developer, or anyone else going over there saying what they're going to do without our input, without our say-so, without our involvement. So that's, and I wanna keep saying that because that's how many times the government and developers have come into Treme and said what they want without our voices being heard. So Natalie wanted to say something, although she's working also, but she has a vision. I'm trying to stay on Facebook. Hey, y'all. Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna defer to everyone else. Y'all have so eloquently said what I
Let
was
me add
gonna
on
say.
to what he said.
Well, I could say something about the commission, but can we
No,
just?
I wanna add on to what he said.
Okay, add it. 2 + 2.
Economic development, that's
Yes.
what the brother was saying. My being a former city employee for about 30 or some odd years, there's funding. You know, the problem that we have in the black community is that we have gatekeepers that deny us funding, really that's allocated to us. We have, I was
Well, I
involved
don't
in
know anything
community
about that,
development, I was
Randall.
involved in community development, and all of the federal dollars, community development dollars that came to the city of New Orleans, came to the city of New Orleans on the backs of black folks, because the city had to inform HUD of our poverty level here, and through the statistics of the poverty level that existed in New Orleans is how we simply got allocated the monies. It's based on poor people, and in our instances, we were 67% black city. It's based on black people. Is how the city got the federal dollars. The problem was your gatekeepers, when it came here, it was reallocated to going elsewhere. Look at one more thing.
Randolph, but I don't want you getting me into any trouble talking about that because.
Well, no, it's reality.
Former,
We're going back to economics.
I know.
You blame me for
No,
that.
I'm not blaming. Well,
Okay, I mean, not for the problem, but in terms of
thing to put on
the
the
idea,
table.
you know.
I have another vision.
Is that called poverty?
Right.
Is that called poverty?
No.
but you know
It's called
what?
stealing money
We
from
can,
black people.
yes, and we can say that, but what we are trying to present are real viable ideas with a mission to go find the funding that we need. Now, if you can help us with that, locating that with the
Well,
information
I'm
you
just giving
have.
you background.
Well,
which
we
give you the
know
direction.
there are people in there.
Right.
You may have one or two of them in the room, but that's okay.
Go to your city
We
council.
coming for the money. We asked for the money last week. We need resources. And it's for a good cause, not just for Treme, but for all of the city of New
Right, no
Orleans,
problem. Okay.
even the
Well,
state.
we're talking about this area.
Okay, all right.
I have another vision.
One
more
last vision for you, because you had many.
I know, I have two
What?
more visions. Another vision I had was the development of a supper club that could be in the Municipal Auditorium. The city doesn't have that. If you guys can remember the Roosevelt and the Hyatt, there was a national jazz artist used to come to town and would go there. There is no place locally in a cocktail, in a supper club environment that can host a major artist. And I think that there's space in the Municipal Auditorium for that. There's parking. And and that could be an additional component in the auditorium.
Okay.
Has there been any thought of having the Office of Cultural Economy
That's a thought.
in the building?
You
That's
just put it
would
out
come
there.
as like a compromise with the city, say, if you wanna have a piece
Well,
of
we
city.
asked them to identify some funding to help us meet this 90-day deadline. And this is the problem that I had, that no one, although there was 3 funding entities in the meeting last Tuesday, not one of those entities stepped up and said, well, we're willing to work with you all. Go talk to the mayor first. She was right there and said, well, what can we do to help? So, it would be nice if they would partner with the SOS Coalition and show some good faith. But I think it's gonna be based on what you all say and how that's presented.
Correct.
So that's where we are. Natalie, you still don't wanna say anything? So we're going to move off. Anything else for the Municipal Auditorium? You all don't wanna see a city hall there, or maybe a little bitty city hall, or maybe just the culture
We're
economy?
gonna throw you out the building.
What's that?
Okay. No city hall, all right, no city hall.
City Hall is too corrupt, and it's historically been too corrupt for it to occupy sacred space.
I think Randolph just said that. All right, so the last one we are going to do, and we good on time, you all, is Congo Square. So I know you all have mixed it all together, that's fine, that's dandy, that's the way I talk anyways. So if you wanna say anything specific you would like to see in Congo Square, in the Southwood, you could probably talk to this more than I about really how large Congo Square is, cause even Natalie thought it was just that little square right there. So I'm gonna ask Asatwa to stop.
Stop recording.
You don't have to stop recording, but just to speak to that so people can get a better idea of what Congo Square really looks like over there.
Well, I think most everybody here knows about Congo Square and what it stands for and what it was. I would like to see the narrative changed on Congo Square. Right now, they just keep talking about what the Africans dance. That's all they talk about. More than dancing happened in Congo Square. It was a place of, first of all, economic sustainability, because they were selling things and making money. There was also planning things. There was also religious activities happening there. It was also, the plaque right now talks about the Humas Indians, but it was more than that. And so because the paradigm has shifted now, we now know that the original Native Americans were people that were copper color and brown and black Indians. That whole narrative has to be shifted and changed. So I would say we need to add an additional placard to reflect the trueness of what happened, because I don't want us just to be reduced to a jigaboo thing. They just was dancing in Congo Square. It's important. I'm a dancer, so I recognize how important dance is, but we gotta address the whole of it. That it was more than that. And I think that's the main thing that I would like to see happen, change up in Congo Square. Prince?
Yeah, I agree. We're quick to, remind people that jazz was born in Congo Square and many other nuances of not just New Orleans culture, but American culture was born in Congo Square. But we don't talk about the spiritual, religious aspect enough for me. Heaven forbid we ever see a day they got, church in Congo Square before we acknowledge the ethnic, cultural, religious practices and traditions that the Akan, the Fan, the Ewe, the Yoruba, the Igbo brought here with them. And that's why New Orleans was able to reconstitute voodoo and traditional African practice, because we were allowed to do it in that space. And I say all the time, if we could count in Fan or Ewe, we were just forced to learn how to count in Portuguese, Spanish, French. And if you can remember how to count, then you can remember your drum rhythms, your dance patterns, and your ritual days for acknowledging of our saints. So that's a very important component for me. I consider myself an Elagoon or a servant of the ancestors, if you will, in that space. And so that's critical for me, to us maintaining true history in that space, Congo Square.
And to the lady, and just my last thing, to the lady in the back about the Civil Rights Museum and the Baton Rouge reference, it actually started in New Orleans because revolts were planned in Congo Square. And I'm just saying, the largest slave revolt that happened in... Right, but what I'm saying is because New Orleans is older than Baton Rouge, first of all.
Point of P actually rivals New Orleans as far as age. It's almost 300 years old.
Almost.
You could.
Almost.
New Orleans is a very good place, and which is why we're here today. I've been fighting the city of New Orleans for the last 30 years. I've been in court with the city of New Orleans, and Treme is not the only area of the city that has issues. I'm dealing with the slave cemetery in Algiers.
Exactly.
So
The whole city of New Orleans.
we are here today is because we've been complacent for too long.
I agree with you. And the reality is, we know that it's not. It's okay. She's just passionate. She's just passionate. A lot of people are. But I'm sorry. You talked about Congo Square. That's what it brings up, right? And the reality. The reality.
Ideas.
But it starts in ideas. The reality is, it's not just, we're fighting this fight for City Hall now, but we know it's all over the city. It's not just that, but this is where we are. We focus on this, and that's what we're dealing with. I don't want to undermine that other neighborhoods are any less significant and have any less history than what's happening right here in Treme.
But we also can't overlook the first black free community.
Yeah.
And we're not. That's why we okay,
To
Randolph.
add
We're gonna
on
bring
is
it in
that
again.
it has an international significance.
Right, a
and
global.
recognition
Global.
and identity, a global one.
It's global.
And one that, as you mentioned, those various tribes or cultures or what have you, those still exist. They're still around, and there could be a connection easily made. Jackie knows, we know folks again.
Right.
And you could bring in, we talk about economic development, things along that line. That in itself has international, like I said, recognition, but it has also an international economic drawing card too.
Right.
That
Right.
space there, you know, and that's very important. And we can look at things on the international level, not just on a local level, and tie all of that in. Because what's going on here is going on in Kenya, is going on in Ghana. The exact conversations that we're having here, it goes on partially in those particular countries. You know,
Okay,
there.
Listen, I do, can I say one real quick?
Can let,
Go ahead.
you're not gonna forget.
Go ahead.
Marcel. You're not
Finish
gonna
and then I'll go after
No, I just want to add what he said. You know, I got Nigerians that think that my podcast is being broadcast from Nigeria. That's how African New Orleans
is, right.
That's how black New Orleans is. So I agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
Marcel.
He's gonna lead that committee.
Marcel.
So we're talking about Congo Square. And, right, that's
The
what.
sacred grounds of
Sacred ground.
Congo
So,
Square.
I mean, I love the statue my people did, and the thing right there, but then that was a white man's vision of what he thought he saw. What's his name? For Harper's Magazine. He drew that picture. And then everything about Congo Square always goes back to the picture that the white man drew about what he thought he saw.
Now I have to acknowledge, I don't know that.
Oh yeah, no, I know. See, I know a lot of history, but that was a picture that the white man drew in Harper's Magazine back in the 1800s of what he thought he saw in Congo Square. So again, even our visions of what we perpetuate is based on what some visitor who didn't know nothing about what he was looking at saw, and now we perpetuate it. But then to go back to what the brother was saying about the different tribes, it was like at least 42 different tribes present,
Right.
42 different African ethnic groups. Maybe something could go down to enhance our storytelling abilities of the space, kind
That's
of how they
right.
got at Wall Street, the African burial ground in New York,
Right.
how they got the symbols and the Ndekra symbols and the reves and all that. Maybe we had a name of all 42 different tribes etched into the circles because they got together
Right.
based on their ethnic groups to try to remember who they was on Sunday. You know, we would get together in our circle like, oh, I'm Congo, let me get with the Congos. Oh, I'm Yoruba, let me get with the Yoruba. Like, at first it was a separate thing in those circles of tribes just trying to remember themselves on a Sunday outside the purview of just being called T-Neg and Gros-Neg, Travailler. You know, like, that's what my grandmother used to call us, you know, my mama. T-Neg, Gros-Neg, they got that off the slave master though. Y'all know what that means. Little nigga, big nigga, you know? But on Sunday, we was Congo, Yoruba, Ewe, Igbo, Akam, Mandingo, Limba, Himba. You feel me? Like, so putting some of that back in there from our perspective as opposed to even the things that we perpetuating is a white man's vision of what he thought he saw us doing. And like
So
you say,
your vision, I hate to interrupt, so your vision would be to remove?
no, I'm not talking about removing what the post is, but I'm saying, but just in
Because if we
addition
had
to,
something more authentic, is what
in addition to, I'm not
to.
trying to destroy nothing, but
Okay.
in addition to, you know, just etching different of our symbols and our language, you know.
We'd like to also, can I add something? We would like to also, in Congo Square, because it's used for other spiritual practices, we would like to have access to the park because the park is restricted. So if you want to go to the tree or if you want to go do some work in the park, you can't go in because the park is either locked or you have to have permission to go in there. And then you, it just needs to be more available for spiritual practice because we know that New Orleans is predominantly a Catholic city, right? But there's also a large number of African practitioners of other religions here who don't have, and ours religion is outdoor, it's with nature. So you gotta be into the elements, right? So I would like to see something when the commission is in place, because we will be sensitive to the needs of that, allowing those practitioners to have access to the park at the times when they need to, because it's not always we don't want to be a spectacle for tourists. It's not for the tourists to come and look at you. It's for after hours. Well, after hours, the park is closed. So we need access to the park, particularly Congo Square, to be able to do functions that you need to do.
So what I'm hearing you say that sacred grounds is not just two words.
Right.
That some African American people that lives in New Orleans really adhere to the sacredcy or the sacristy of Congo Square, and it should be respected.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So, anyone else? We clearing out the room now, y'all. Congo Square, we knew a lot of people they was not gonna wanna touch it anyways. Luther is out there every Sunday. You go out there on a Sunday and try to touch it, you're gonna be met with something. Maybe an ancestor.
Just from what I was saying about, so who, can it somehow, as a sacred site, can we remove it out of like Parks and Parkways office? So that it don't have to be.
Is that a vision? Are you presenting that as a vision to have Congo
Present
Square?
that as a vision. I would like to present that as a vision. Maybe removing the sacred site of Congo Square out of the jurisdiction of Parks and Parkways, so that we have, it don't have to be for the sundown, close at sundown, lock the gate kind of thing around it, where that would help us have access to it anytime. Because, you know, I live right there and I always see him locking the gate, and I be trying to go get in good with him, so get his phone number so I can see if he could open the gate for me early if I need to get in there and do some stuff, you know, so. But everybody, not me, who can just go talk to the dude.
We're not gonna talk about how we've been locked out,
Oh.
but I think that goes back to what Randolph said earlier in his first comments about the commission.
Right. Control.
Okay, having total control.
Correct.
But your thoughts, your ideas, and your vision has been recorded. So we have it. Alonzo, I saw your hand up. You put it up, then you put it back down. Okay.
So can we
Okay,
wrap up?
so
It's
do we have,
7:30.
it's 7:30. Do we have any more comments? Anybody want a bag of potato chips, a bottle of water?
Mooney Man ain't got nothing to say.
Mooney Man, you don't have nothing to say?
You're taking it all in.
You taking it all in?
Everybody's saying
So when you become mayor, you know what we want, right?
Or if my partner become mayor over there on the Malane,
We're gonna co-mayor.
we're taking it in, you know, we taking it in.
Well, I hope you all are taking
And I'm
it
glad
in.
to see Mr. Randolph Scott, cause what he's telling y'all, he's been around for 30 years or more, and what he's telling y'all is all the truth. I like to write that down for me, this fan, he taught it to me, and I'm glad, excited to see him joining y'all, because now I know it's gonna be a bigger fight, cause Randolph Scott knows some things.
Mooney Man, I had to beg him.
Huh?
Please come to me. Please come on Tuesday or Wednesday.
All right.
Because he do have good information. So, any other comments? Natalie, you wanna come in now and say something before we close out? We have about 30 minutes.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out. The cultural preservation of this city is so super important to me. I have a daughter that actually attends this school, Homer Plessy. And we were having a conversation with Mr. Height in the back, and you'd be surprised how many kids that even attend my daughter's school don't even know who Homer Plessy is. I'm a person that's a documentary buff. I watch PBS constantly, and I see our city being highlighted and spotlighted by the cultural community globally, nationally, and you know, this city is already a destination for just that. The Municipal Auditorium should be treated as a destination the same as the Louvre in Paris. I mean, that's the level of cultural impact that this city has for me particularly, and I can see how fiercely everybody here is protective of that. And you'd be surprised how many people on a global stage feel the same way. I mean, when I see Wynton Marsalis talk about jazz, talk about Louis Armstrong, I mean, it really brings me to tears when I watch those documentaries, and that is just how important it should be to our mayor. You know, I stand on the shoulders of culture bearers like Miss Cheryl, like Asetua, Miss Jackie. I'm just so proud to be a part of this group, and I just want everybody to continue to be unified for the same purpose, because it's not just important to us as New Orleanians, it's important to everyone on this planet.
Good job, man.
Jackie, can I introduce some other members or anyone else that is a member of the SOS Coalition that's here? Can you stand, be recognized? We have been putting in a lot of work. A commission has come up more than once. One was actually formed that we did not enact, so you all are on point.
Right here.
Just like we said earlier, we didn't believe that the vision of the community or residents citywide would differ from what we have been saying could happen over there. So this is night 1 of 2, and tomorrow we hope we have a different crowd to get some more input on what needs to happen over there.
Got your commission. Got your commission.
Jackie Harris, She's been serving as the PRO person for SOS. Asatwa has been the gatherer of all the information that's been going out on SOS. I'm just like, wherever y'all need me, I'll be, because I've been here in Treme. Natalie came aboard to help us with the presentation in IT to get us more in line of what
It'll
needs
be
to
better
take
tomorrow,
place.
I promise y'all, it'll be way better.
Renard.
Renard is with Magno, but he's volunteering for us tonight. Prince is my neighbor. Prince is my
Activist,
friend.
spiritual warrior.
And he's been very involved with the SOS. I'm gonna skip you, Alonzo, and go to Pastor Manning, who has been really our namesake. Because he named the group, Save Our Soul, because he saw and realized that Treme is the soul of the city. That everything cultural in this city came out of this neighborhood. And so that is sacred grounds over there, and we're standing here to protect it. But Alonzo, if you do have something to say,
You can pass the man and say something too.
that is Pastor Manning.
No,
Pastor
no,
Manning,
give him
can you
something. Say
close us out
something.
in prayer? Thank you.
Not just prayer, but he has something else he
Well,
wanted to say.
Just say, yes,
Yeah.
can you close us out? Can you come up here and, because I've been standing for like 2 hours. Good night, everyone.
I was just gonna say, can I make a word too? I was gonna say too, whatever we do, we need to raise up our younger people. We need to train them. And we got, elders have so much to teach our young people. And not only that, when we look at just how much we have to teach other cultures in New Orleans, people will come from everywhere just to learn the skill set that people like Devon have, or people who are like Asetawa have, just how to dance, how to cook. They'll come to us to learn that because we've been teaching other cultures that for long before 300 years in New Orleans. So we will continue to do that. Let's pray. God, we just ask, God of the universe, God of all creation, God that meets us here in this place, God that has endowed us with all kinds of gifts, God that has equipped us for this moment in time. God, we thank you that we have coalesced, that we have converged on this moment in history. That God, we bring to this moment all kinds of our past, all segments of our past, all segments of who we are and who we have grown to be and what we have learned and what we have to teach. And so God, I pray that this be a new beginning, not only a new beginning, but a remembrance of the old, and that God, that you would catapult us far further than we ever dreamed we could be. That we would never stop believing that in us is the power, that we have the ability, and that we don't have to depend or rely upon anyone, that we don't have to beg, borrow, or steal. It's already ours. And so, God, I pray that you would add more to this coalition, more to this group, and that you would free our minds, oh God, free our minds so that we can dream big and vision even greater. See us home now, see us safely, and give us slumber and rest tonight so we wake up eager tomorrow to envision a new life and a new vision of what this can be.